Hello strangers, I am Cable and I like the campaign trail. What is the campaign trail, you may ask? I don't know, I can't hear you, but for those that did ask, the campaign trail is a free browser game where you take the role of a candidate in an election in one of a multitude of scenarios. The game itself is very simple, leading to a vast modding community, leading to multiple game loaders, alternate history scenarios, the occasional tiff of drama, and established development teams. One such development team is the W team, who have been pioneering different tech, focusing on choose your own adventure mechanics and stat tracking to develop a series of new mods, the most recent of these being Things That Never Were. Things That Never Were is the single most overhyped mod to have been made on the campaign trail. The failure of the mod to be consistent as to its theme and writing leads to it feeling very jarring at points and overall having a feeling of being off. To demonstrate this, we shall focus on three core elements: the aesthetic theme of the mod, the point of the mod, and the world the mod creates. Before we do that, however, it is worth congratulating the good parts of the mod. The team have done a really good job of making a vast network of routes, and the choose your own adventure does feel very intuitive for the situations the characters find themselves in. The unique stats tracking has a lot of potential, and the obvious scale and polish is in of itself praiseworthy, but that does not make the mod without criticism. The first and shortest criticism I want to draw attention to is the confused aesthetic theme of the mod. Things That Never Were is named after a, as far as I can find, fictional theatre production of the same name. Indeed, the first song you hear, Company, is a musical in of its own right. But, as Reddit user I'm Fake I think points out, it stops very abruptly and doesn't get picked up again until the very end of the mod. And this isn't just for the music, it's also for the writing. The startup reads like the introductory monologue to a play, and the character bio for Bobby reads the casting call, but then it just ends. Russell Long's bio is just like any other, and the questions that are otherwise well written fail to capture that same vibe. The curtain rise is often too early, which makes the shift feel jarring, something I noticed yet again at the ending. It's almost as though this musical angle was inserted into the mod late into development, which is exactly what happened. We have access to the W dev blogs for this mod on Reddit and Discord, and looking at the earlier ones, we see a direct screenshot of the Bobby Kennedy bio and the introduction, both of which lack the musical theme that now takes over the mod when you first see it. This was clearly a late addition, and as a result is one that feels jarring with the rest of the mod. These are fairly minor aesthetic gripes with the mod, ones that can be fairly easily overlooked as they are a nice addition even if I personally find them jarring. What is much more objective is how we analyse the mod, is the way the mod makes its central point. What is its point? The point the mod seems to be making is that these beloved figures in the liberal political pantheon would not have been able to wave a magic wand to fix the country. Politics is hell, and some of these would struggle to get their agenda passed. It's very cynical in the way it approaches how these people would, had they actually won, have behaved once president. The issue with this approach is that it needs to be grounded in a reality where these liberals won, and the characters are the characters the mod claims they are. If you make the world poorly or mischaracterize the characters, the central point will be undermined, which leads us directly to the world that TTNW makes. Things That Never Were is a Nixon mod, and because of this it fails at this point. What I mean is that every major crisis, every major policy proposal is a Nixon proposal, or a Nixon issue, or a Nixon cabinet appointee. Or failing that is an issue that has no relevance to a Bobby presidency. There are a number of examples of this occurring. The Son Mai massacre, hard hat riots, negative income tax, and broader family assistance plan are all ripped from the Nixon administration. To demonstrate the absurdity of some of these being included, I will particularly focus on the hard hat riots and the family assistance plan. The hard hat riots are not named as such in the mod, instead nebulous protests occur across the United States, for whatever reason pitting students against European Catholics. There's no explicit reason given for this, again a nebulous claim that slowness on the Vietnam War is to blame, but the real life protests that they are based off of, or that the protests that they actually are, have a cause. A cause that can, as with a lot of these types of events, be traced back fairly squarely to Nixon. These riots in real life had a central match that was struck: the National Guard shooting at university protesters. These initial university protesters were protesting the expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia. This is question 9, not late enough in the mod to let you expand into Cambodia, but bizarrely these riots happen, almost as if the mod makers wanted a big student protest to happen, but didn't want to give an avoidable reason for it to happen. So they just stuck a Nixon-era event into the mod and called it a day. In a similar vein, the family assistance plan is invented by Moynihan, your Health and Urban Development Secretary, to be your be-all and end-all economic policy. The mod suggests, bizarrely, that Bobby had no other personal proposals and is instead relying on IRL Nixon allies to fix the problem. Your Vice President, Russell Long, doesn't speak in opposition against it, which he did in real life, and overall Bobby's only avenues are to either make it more liberal for, to use his words, the bleeding hearts in Congress, or try and force it through. Again, you're just playing as Nixon, all down to fears against the bleeding hearts. There's other examples the mod brings up. The Bretton Woods system, price controls, the Vietnam War debacle, and so on. But these are the most egregious examples of Nixon LARP, which leave you wondering whether this is in service to a wider point, or just a failure at research. This issue, with the mod being effectually a Nixon mod, is reinforced with the way the mod writes Kennedy. As earlier stated, the focus on bleeding hearts more Nixon than Kennedy, and we see similar ways where Kennedy's character is very much more like Nixon in the way he approaches issues. The way Kennedy is written undercuts the idea this isn't a Nixon mod. Kennedy is really bitter in the way he approaches problems, where in real life he wasn't. He's Machiavellian in his approach to political enemies, where in real life he was stubborn but fairly well mannered. The major example of this for our devices is the Goldwater abortion event chain. This is something you could include, but the way it is in turn written dispels any rumours that this could be inserted into a Kennedy mod. I'm not going to give a laundry list of examples like this, there's just too much written text to comb through to do that. Again, this is an awesome undertaking for the W team to have taken on, but it is a theme. Kennedy isn't Kennedy, and overall it undercuts any idea of the mod being an effective critique of this sort of deification of these figures, as the reality it paints isn't realistic for the focal point of the mod. Part of the reason for this, I think, is that this is the first time this mod team is taking a stab at a president-changing alternate history scenario, and they don't know the best way to do research for it. It's why we don't see sources offered in further reading. They don't know what to include, or what to look for, so they instead take the opportunity to add more in-universe information for the player. It's better than offering nothing, but it leaves me wanting, especially when the mod takes such concerted efforts to turn an RFK presidency to just a Nixon presidency with a prettier face. The cynical nature of the mod is a consistent underlying issue here, and I'll acknowledge the level of cynicism it takes is, for me, beyond my tastes. But the reasoning it takes to get that cynical nature is the bigger issue. It undercuts the character of Bobby Kennedy, and it undercuts the world that Bobby Kennedy inhabits, all for the sake of trying to be cynical. Things That Never Were could be a Kennedy mod. It could be cynical about him, but instead it tries to be a Nixon mod, and for that reason, it's underwhelming. Now, the original script for this ended there, but I realised that not only did the video not reach that glorious 10-minute mark, but I felt unsatisfied just lambasting this stuff. It's fairly easy to whinge about a project you didn't have to do a lick of work for, but it's another thing to offer an alternative. So in recognition of the brilliant work the W team did on this, I decided to offer my own take. So what does a cable brand TTNW look like? First of all, we are doing away with the musical motif, replacing it instead with something more thematic for the point we're trying to make. We're also going to shift the point a touch. Instead of a broad cynicism of the liberal pantheon, we're instead going to focus on the loss of values in the pursuit of victory. And for this, there's a perfect movie that we can continuously reference. So instead of a casting call, our mod starts with the blaring of the opening song to the candidate. I could talk about this movie alone for literal hours, so maybe that's a future video idea, but the reason I bring it up now is that there are glaring similarities between Bill McMath, the titular candidate, and, if nothing else, the myth of Robert F. Kennedy. Indeed, he's even compared to Kennedy earlier in the film, and we can bring the broad narrative of this movie to the campaign trail. In your earlier questions, you are earnestly trying, but it's a battle, and to do anything you have to give up ground. Over the course of the mod, we see more and more of our values undercut, until we are passing Nixon-style bills just to get something under our belt. We could even draw comparisons to Peace with Honor here. The family assistance plan can stay, but unlike the mod selling it to something RFK earnestly believes in, we sell it as something he knows is popular but doesn't actually like. And we can repeat this energy elsewhere too. This way, not only do we keep the thematic motif following us, we also execute the point of our mod without needing to undercut the actual character we are using. And in turn, we can offer an actual critique of this deification of liberal political failures. These are very broad ideas, intentionally so, but I hope it helps to demonstrate the comparable issues with TTNW that I detailed earlier. TTNW is not bad, but it is overhyped and could have very easily been so much better. That's a wrap. That took me way longer than I care to admit. This was initially going to be released a couple weeks after TTNW released, but life got in the way, I kept getting distracted. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you like this sort of stuff, comment, let me know. And if the dev team is watching this, hi, I'm sorry I dogged on your baby. It's a mod that I found myself not really loving as much as I thought I would, and I couldn't get out of my head. So I decided to make this video rather than pinning pen to paper and just messaging directly. I hope you guys don't mind that I'm profiting off of my gripes with your mod. Bye.